Welcome to How They Won. I'm your host, Bob Burns, and every week I get successful real estate professionals across North America to share their secrets of success with you. In this week's episode, I got to interview serial real estate entrepreneur Rob Mehta. In addition to being affiliated with Coldwell Banker Realty in Minnesota and Wisconsin, Rob is also licensed with Coldwell Banker Residential Real Estate in Florida. As if that wasn't enough, Rob is also the principal of Rob Mehta and Partners, a training and consulting firm. I spoke with Rob from his second home in Thailand about taking risks, the secret of success that all entrepreneurs share, and his unique realtor referral business. I think you're going to learn a lot from our conversation because I certainly did. Now, before we start the episode, I want to take a quick moment to say thank you to you, the listeners. The growth of this podcast has been absolutely awesome, and it's because of your enthusiasm and generosity in sharing it with your friends and colleagues. Thank you for your support. Now, let's start the show. This week's episode is brought to you by Leaders Edge Coaching. Full disclosure, I am a trainer and a coach with Leaders Edge. But like you, I can choose to do business with anyone. But I choose to work with Leaders Edge. Leaders Edge has the right experience, knowledge, and tools to help you take your business to the next level. Whether that means closing more transactions, or improving your work-life balance, or building a team the right way, the coaches and staff at Leaders Edge can help you achieve your goals. For more information, email coaching@howtheywon.com. That's coaching@howtheywon.com. I am really excited about my guest today. He has truly done it all in the real estate business. After getting into real estate sales in his college days, my guest today has been a broker, a company owner, a trainer, a speaker, a branch manager, a coach. He's founded 2 companies. And now, in addition to doing management consulting for real estate companies all over the world, he manages a real estate sales practice that spans 2 states. You can find him online on his website at www.robmehtapartners.com. That's ROBMEHTA partners.com. So let's get right into it. Rob Mehta, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show.
Hey, Bob. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on the show with you today.
I'm excited too. So before we get into the deeper part of our discussion, I always like to start with a lighter question. Tell me about the time that a home builder almost ran you over with their car.
Oh gosh, wow, that's an old story, but a kind of an interesting one. This happened many years ago. I want to say maybe 15 years ago or something like that. I was newer in the business, not new, but newer. And I had aggressively pursued a builder, a small to mid-sized builder, I would say, kind of custom builder that I wanted to work with. And this builder had a partner, and I got one of the partners on board, but I guess not the other one, because I ran into the other partner at one of the properties. And now, before this all happened, my contact that had green lighted us to represent him had said, I'm still working through some things with my partner, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fine. And so I found myself with keys to this property, went over to preview the property, all that kind of good stuff. It was a spec built home, and his partner happened to be there. And me being, in my 20s at the time, and I guess, sometimes, talking before I really thought things through, basically kind of got into a confrontation with his partner a little bit. And his partner said I had no right to be there. And I said, well, yes, I do, because I've got keys to this property. And I said, I think you really don't have a right to be here. And so from there, things escalated a little bit. I kind of walked out after I did my preview, and I was about to get into my car in the driveway, and this guy was still there. And so I kind of walked towards his car. And as I was walking towards his car, I realized that he was accelerating, and felt like, he was probably going to, mow me over unless I got in my car and left. And so it was an interesting situation, to say the least. Again, being, in my 20s and maybe not thinking things through, and maybe taunting him a little bit more than I should have at that point in time, probably didn't win me any favors. But yeah, it was interesting to say the least. The partnership on their end faded, and so that was a good thing. I never really had to deal with the guy after that, and we moved on. So, but yeah, it was interesting. It was a little soap opera-ish at the moment. Outside of the fact that I almost got run over.
That's nuts. I've heard all kinds of stories about confrontations and so forth, but that sounds like a really serious one. Oh my goodness.
I think if I been a little bit older and wiser, I probably the same. But at the time, again, being young and a little more careless and feeling like you're invincible, it put me in the situation, but it probably saved me from the situation as well. Yeah, so kind of a double-edged sword, I guess.
Absolutely. We learn to de-escalate as we get older instead of leaning into those confrontations.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Absolutely.
So I'd like to pivot a little bit. I think that's a neat story, but I want to pivot, and I have a bit of a personal question actually that I'd like to ask, and I hope it's okay. You've made some decisions that I think are really cool and brave, and frankly, I spend some of my time trying to be as brave as you are, Rob. You may not know how much of like a little bit of a rabbit you are to me that I'm chasing in my career. I met you when you were single. You were on a salaried position with Coldwell Banker Burnett, living in cold Minnesota, where I grew up. But just a couple of years ago, all that changed. You flipped the script completely. You got married, you had a baby, you left your salaried position, you started an independent company, you moved to a whole other state in Florida, and now you spend a significant amount of time in Southeast Asia operating your business in addition to your other businesses. Now, Rob, I got to tell you, most people I know would go the complete opposite direction. They would seek stability and predictability with all of that marriage and family stuff, but you've gone the absolute opposite direction. Why? That's an awfully good question. And I actually find myself asking that question to myself quite frequently. Well, the short answer is I literally, from the moment I started in the real estate industry and selling property, and for me, that happened when I was 19. I was in college and was bored and decided I needed to find something to do. And real estate had nothing to do with it all. It just happened to be that became the vehicle, for it. But literally from that moment forward, I've always been of the mindset that I've always wanted to be my own boss, be entrepreneurial, do what I want to do. And that's what carried me through, the earlier years of the business, the time that I owned my own company. That was about 8 or 9 years during that period. The market crashing when it did in 2006 and 2007, all of that. And quite honestly, until I actually went to work for Coldwell Banker NRT in the Twin Cities, and that was in 2010, I hadn't had a boss for, quite honestly, my entire adult life. And it was an interesting experience having a boss and having to sort of fit into that structure. And it was a great experience. But after about 6 years of that, I realized that it was time to go off and get back into the entrepreneurial side of the business. And I had a lot of, a lot of indicators that kept pushing me in that direction. We were already running a training business within the confines of what I was doing with NRT, but also doing training for associations and getting requests to do training for other brokers and other entities and that sort of thing. So the timing I knew was never going to be perfect when we decided to make the move, and we wanted to move to Florida as well. That was something that had been on my bucket list for a while. So kind of all these different things sort of started to percolate, and we made this decision of, the timing isn't going to be perfect, but let's make a move. Let's make a step forward and see where it will take us. And, I have to say that I've had incredible support from family and all of this. Otherwise, it would have been really, really hard to make it happen. And we're still very much in, I would say, the early stages of our business in its entirety. So, it still feels like a startup in many ways as we refine systems, we refine processes and all of that. I think that's incredible. And I've got to admit, so I started as an independent real estate agent 20 years ago, but the bulk of my career until really the last 12 months, I've been a W-2 employee with a salary, and although it is restrictive, the stability and predictability of that has been something that I guess I got used to over the course of 15 years. And over the last 12 months, there are times I feel in my business that it's scary. You don't know what the future holds. The past has been good. The present is good, but you don't know what the future holds. And every time I get a little scared, I think about you. I'm like, man, if I'm scared about this, look at Rob. He's doing all of these things. I'm only doing one of these things, and I have no right to be scared. I'm just going to persevere and push forward like Rob Mehta does.
Well, I think, I think it's one of these things. You either really thrive on it, and I think many of us in this industry, or if you own really anybody that owns their own business, you either really thrive on what I call that paranoia a little bit and that fear factor, or it's debilitating. It's one of the two. And I've seen people where they come out of a career where they've had a steady paycheck and benefits and all of that. And people will sometimes succeed in this kind of business or running their own business. And some people will not. And, they do become debilitated, if you will, by the fact that, there are so many unknowns. And of course, where's your next paycheck coming from and all of that. For me, I've always thrived on it. And so even though, after about 6.5 years of being with Coldwell Banker NRT and enjoying a steady salary and, the benefits and all of that, it was tough. I mean, to be quite honest, it was really tough. And it was scary too, to leave that behind and say, okay, I'm ready to go off and do something on my own again. But for me, it came back to a couple of things. And I'm sure you've heard this from other entrepreneurs and other real estate professionals as well. One was, of course, having what I felt was my own freedom again and sort of my own, if you will, sort of the artistic aspect of it, of really being able to carve out what it is that you want to do, try different things and so on and so forth. And number two with that was that I had to come to terms with the fact that, if I made, let's say, half of the money that I made the year prior or less, that I was going to be okay with that, especially over the next 3 or 4 years as we built back the business and we expanded and did new things. So those were kind of the two major overriding factors that, I had to make sure that I was really comfortable with. And I was, of course. And so that's what, took us down this decision path of, okay, I'm ready to leave, the safety and the security behind.
So like me, you've seen a ton of people get into this business and a ton of people get out. I think the statistic that NAR publishes is that I think 80% of realtors make it 18 months or fewer in this business. As a fellow training professional, you've seen a lot of people get into this business and you've seen a lot of people get out. And we're talking about kind of like either have it or you don't. What do you think is that factor that enables people to be a part of the 20% that makes it?
Well, I think it really comes down to, I wouldn't say it has much to do with skill or luck or any of that. I think it just really comes down to, their desire to want to create their own business and obviously having a business mindset and treating this like a business, obviously can make a huge difference as well. But, in my time after having recruited literally, hundreds of agents, not only for my own company, but also for Coldwell Banker when I was in a branch management role, and then, eventually working with branch managers and helping them recruit agents and so on and so forth. And, so I've seen the wide variety of individuals that, get into this industry. And of course, one of the things that is I think a positive as well as a negative for this industry is the low barrier to entry. The fact that licensing in most states can be accomplished in under a month. The cost is relatively low, so on and so forth. So you do get, a wide variety of individuals that jump into something like this. But, again, I think if I was to boil it down to a few things, it would be the desire to want to be their own boss and really run things like a business. And, sort of that overarching theme of, hey, you know what, no matter what, this, I'm jumping in with both feet. And, the agents that I've seen that succeed faster are the ones that really do jump in with both feet and make a mental commitment that they're going to succeed. They come in there with the mindset, or they very quickly adapt that mindset. And you see those agents thrive in the matter of a year or 2 years.
It's not that they want to succeed. It's that they have to succeed, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I would agree. What's that old saying, right? Failure is not an option, right? I remember recruiting an agent years ago when I had my own company. And at that time, she was a single mom. And, we hear all about the single moms, and it's almost a cliche, but it was true. And she didn't have a young child at home. Her child was a teenager. But nonetheless, she had come out of a corporate position, got into real estate. She was with another company when I met her. We became, friends over the course of probably 6 months or so, and, kept in touch. And when she finally made the move over to my company, she basically said to me, she said, I'm not looking to take a step back here. This is what I'm committed to doing. If that means that I'm going to make $25,000 for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, so be it, because I can see that this is going to be a big business for me and it's going to grow. I'm willing to put in the time. I'm willing to put in the effort to do what I need to do. And quite honestly, she didn't have to wait 3-4 years to see the success of her mindset. She very quickly became a 6-figure agent in a matter of, I think, about 2 years. So, but again, it was the mindset and the decision she had made that this is what she was going to do. And she was going to learn the art and the craft of being a good broker. And she did it.
So people like her and people like you are reasons that I am still doing this. I am such a fan of someone who just decides. They just decide. That's the only difference is they decide that this is what it's going to be. So I think that's really, really cool. And I want to pivot a little bit, Rob, to what you're doing right now, because I think you've built a really, really interesting and unique business model that I believe will eventually, if it's not already, that will eventually create what I like to call mailbox money for you. Your job is to go out to the mailbox and grab the check. And that is the dream that so many people have. So tell us a little bit about your referral business that you're building to gather agent referrals and service those referrals.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when we decided that we wanted to make the move into the Florida market, we wanted to live in Florida and build a business. One major advantage that I did have was the fact that, I've been licensed in the Twin Cities, for, at that time, almost 17, 18 years. And of course, being in the training side of the business as well, had many, many relationships, lots of agents in our database, and Minnesota being one of the larger markets for investment and migration, if you will, down to the Florida market. So it was just kind of a natural, to have that. And I decided early on that we would tap into those relationships that we had built over the course of many, many years. And it, not only with our own company, but also agents across, it didn't matter where the agent was, who the agent was with in terms of the company. It was more of the relationship. And so that's been the overarching theme of our business, has been to cultivate and keep growing those relationships with those agents. And we have agents that are very active marketing partners, meaning that they actually take some of our listings and our information and push it out there to their database. We have some agents that are a little bit more passive, that just, kind of keep an ear to the ground, if you will, with their database and send us referrals, whenever they can. And that's been, I would say, probably about 95% of our business over the last 3.5 years. Has been, those agents, whether it's an email, a phone call, whatever, a text message, saying, hey, I've got somebody looking to, go down to Naples, or I've got somebody looking to go to Miami or whatever. And, we of course get in touch with their client, figure out what they're looking to do. Usually it's one of 3 things. They're looking to either make a permanent move, they're looking to buy an investment property, or they're looking to snowbird. And so really kind of that's, our 3 buckets, if you will, where typically our clients kind of fall into. Or they already have a property that they're looking to sell. That, of course, comes along as well. But most of our business right now is very buyer side heavy, I would say. So it's inbound business coming into the market, not so much people that are looking to sell. And so again, that's been about 95% of our business so far. Paying out referral fees, of course, and of course then that agent working with our local agent, and so on and so forth.
That is awesome. And I know there are so many agents in, let's call it, northern climates that would love the opportunity to move south to warmer places like you have, and they're trying to decode how to do this whole thing. My question, I guess, then for those people listening that are in that position is, can you break it down like step 1, step 2, step 3 for someone who dreams of moving from their cold market to a warm market and creating this referral pipeline between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are working at a market where you've got obviously inbound traffic coming into, step 1, of course, is to do a little bit of research into where is that traffic coming from. Now, in our case, as I mentioned, it was really easy. We know that there's quite a bit of traffic coming from states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, so on and so forth. So do your research, figure out where your traffic is. One of the things that I always recommend to agents that are in resort markets, one of the easiest things you can look at is look at where your flights are coming from. If you've got, so for us, RSW is our home airport. which is Southwest Florida, where are your nonstops coming from, and frequency and so on and so forth, because there's a reason why there's traffic coming in from those locations. And those might be areas that you might want to focus on. If you have new nonstops opening up to new destinations from your location, that's another thing that you should have a look at. And excuse me. And then start focusing on building some relationships with those agents that have those clients in those markets. This is not, I've told agents this before too. This is definitely not the short game. This is the long game, because obviously building relationships takes time. Making sure you're cultivating these relationships takes time. It's not about getting the business, in the door in the next 30 days. If you're looking for business in the next 30 days, you're going to have to work some local business. You're going to have to work on some other strategies that can bring you that business, because this strategy is not going to do that. This is all about the long play. It's all about building that database of referral partners. And of course, those referral partners have to feel like you are the person that is going to take really, really good care of their client. And so, of course, that's most important as well. And then, after that, once you've started establishing referral partners, keep feeding them. Think of your referral partners as your customers. And with that, make sure that you're constantly letting your customers know what's happening in your market, so that they've got some ammunition, they've got some information that they can go out there and, promote your market with. If you can do that on a consistent basis, first of all, you'll build top of mind awareness and you'll stay in front of them more often. But now you're giving them the tools to go out there and promote you and promote your market as well. And, with our referral partners, I always tell them, hey, this is such a win-win opportunity, win-win-win really for all of us, because one, it opens up a new sales channel that they did not have prior. Number two, makes them look like the hero in front of their client that now is looking to do something. And number three, their client gets taken care of, and really number three is almost number one in most cases, because we've got to start with that. And so, again, it takes time to accomplish these things. It's not an overnight process. I had a bit of an advantage having worked for NRT, and then of course still being licensed with NRT, Coldwell Banker in the Twin Cities. Lots of relationships in our company, but I would say half of our referrals right now come from agents that aren't within our company in the Twin Cities. So they're, Remax and Century 21 and, other firms as well that are sending us their clients because we've got that trust factor established there in terms of, they know that if they send us a client, we're going to take really good care of that client, and we're going to keep them in the loop in the process as well in terms of kind of what's going on.
Really cool.
Those are kind of the overall steps. Yeah. Definitely a process.
Now, do you maintain licenses in both places? Have you kept your Minnesota license and now you have a Florida license, or have you let the Minnesota lapse?
No, I'm still licensed in Minnesota as well as Florida. Our Minnesota practice is pretty small now. It's really just past clients, and it's some referrals that we get, through that database and so on and so forth. So we don't do a lot of Minnesota business anymore. The focus over the last 3 years has really been growing the Florida group. And when I say group, what we've done is we've established an agent, at least one, if not sometimes two and sometimes 3 and 4, depending on the size of the metro. But we've got an agent in our group that is covering, pretty much all of the state, all the major metro markets. We've got somebody in. So whether you're talking Panama City Beach, in the Panhandle, working your way down the coast and then going back up the coast on the other side from Miami, Fort Lauderdale, there's a couple of areas where we've got a little bit of a gap. But other than that, we've got good coverage. So we can handle pretty much anybody coming into the market, which is, again, another thing that we promote out there in our referral partners, is we let them know that we can take care of their client no matter where their client wants to go in the state. And if their client starts out looking at property in, Panama City Beach, and then decides that they want to own in Daytona Beach, no problem. We can seamlessly handle that client. And we've got agents in both markets, that can coordinate and so on and so forth. So it's, the agent's not going to lose the referral just because the client decided to switch up their search criteria.
For agents looking to build this kind of business model, what I just heard, and tell me if this summary is about accurate. So really, you've got to build up a base of referral partners that are going to send business to you. You've got to then build up a series of agents that are going to receive that referral business and service it according to your guidelines of how you'd like those customers to be served. And you've got to constantly be building both. You've got to build a bigger pool of agents referring business. And then you've got to have service partners for where that business is going that have qualified and that as the person facilitating this whole thing, that are going to deliver a consistent and predictable level of service to the referrals. And then it grows from there. Is that kind of a good basic summary?
I would say so. Yes. Yes. Very much so. Now again, our market maybe is a little bit unique. Maybe it's not. Obviously in Florida, we've got so many markets within the state that are investment markets and, vacation markets and so on and so forth. And so just with the business model that we were establishing, I knew that we would have to build out the infrastructure while we were, obviously building out the referral partners as well. And now that might not be the case for every agent that's listening to this. You might have an agent that works a specific metro in California and, wants to build a larger referral base with, that market. And that's great. You're not going to have to go out there and maybe establish all these partner relationships in terms of other, agents to service, let's say the surrounding area like we've had to do. But yeah, absolutely. That's what we've done. We've, as we've continued to expand the referral network with the agents that can send us inbound referrals, we've continued to expand our infrastructure in terms of the agents that we have within our group as well. And then we've got some criteria for those agents as well in terms of obviously how long have they operated in the local market, what kind of business are they doing on their own. Our average agent, in our metros, is generally doing 8 to 10 million in sales on their own without us. And what they get from us is, is sort of icing on the cake for them, if you will. But they're all running their own independent businesses that are very strong in their own rights. And of course, because of that, they're very knowledgeable about what's happening in their local markets. And that was very, very important to me, of course, is to make sure that we have the right referral partner in place for that local market, so that when our client was referred over, to that person, that, of course, this was going to be a trusted advisor type relationship.
Really, really exciting stuff. And as I think about this, when we were first starting this discussion, Rob, I was thinking, okay, so this is a podcast for people who live in destination type markets like Miami or like Southern California or like parts of Texas or maybe the Carolinas. But really, it works in any kind of direction you can conceive. I moved to Des Moines, Iowa, about 4.5 years ago. And what I've learned is there's a ton of people relocating to Des Moines, Iowa from all over the country. So regardless of what market you're in, I think there's an opportunity to look at, like how you recommended, look at the inbound traffic to your market, find out where those people are coming from, and then seek out relationships with real estate professionals on the other side to build that referral pipeline. It can really be from anywhere to anywhere if you put the work in. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. And again, I just used, that one specific scenario as an example. I mean, there's many other ways, of course, and many other scenarios you can look at in terms of, identifying where the traffic is coming from. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, this can work for really any market. If you're in a market that's growing, and I think the vast majority of us are, the level of growth might be different. Now, Florida is growing exponentially, of course, so because of a number of factors. Your market might not be booming as much as the state of Florida is. But if you're in a growing market, yeah, absolutely. You've got the ability there now to identify, where's the growth coming from. And, one thing that I sometimes hear from agents as well, all the traffic coming into my market is corporate business and it's tied up with relocation and so on and so forth. Don't be so sure. What I've seen trends wise over the last few years is, yes, I mean, relocation does play into it a little bit, but there are companies, there are mid-sized companies and, small companies even that don't have relocation contracts. And so, there is an opportunity there to crack that open a little bit. And again, identify where the traffic is coming from. Why are they moving into your market? Or why are they investing in your market? So on and so forth. And then sort of work backwards, from there. You mentioned about Southeast Asia. I'm sure some of your listeners that were catching on to that are, well, what about Southeast Asia? So last year we decided that we were going to expand and we were going to set up a base of operations. We had an opportunity to do some consulting work as well in Thailand. And we decided to take advantage of that opportunity to also set up an investment office, if you will, basically, and start establishing relationships throughout Asia as well. So it's basically taking the same approach that we were using with our U.S. brokers and saying, okay, now let's do the same thing, but let's expand this, to the other side of the ocean if we can. And knowing that the Asian market is the fastest growing group of investors coming into the United States, it's a very lucrative market to get established with. And so, again, it was the same concept. Has it been, nothing's easy, but this has definitely been much harder than anything else I've tried, but we were still willing to give it a shot because I know that there's business to be at.
The lesson what I'm picking up on here is it doesn't even really matter where you are physically located, you could, from your story in Florida, and now that you're building a base in Southeast Asia, really what it comes down to, the strategy is where are people moving from and where are people moving to? And how can I, as the real estate professional, build up business to business relationships in both of those nodes and act as the pipeline between them? So you spend half your time in Thailand. In fact, part of the reason why you're a little bit scratchy and you've coughed a couple times in this interview is because you just came back from Mumbai, and and you're still facilitating this pipeline of business from Minnesota to Florida. You don't even have to be in Florida. You could pick two cities, folks that are listening, figure out how to connect those two cities and create a little mailbox money for yourself. That's what I'm learning from you, Rob. Do you think that is right, a realistic thing for agents who want to focus on this to actually do?
I think it is. That being said, I will say that obviously, their established market where they're currently working is probably a good base to begin with. You've got to be a stakeholder somewhere. So, for us, we're stakeholders in Florida, which we feel is a very good market, and great quality of life, et cetera, et cetera. And to answer your question, I mean, I can be based, anywhere, and many times I'm on a call with a client or an inbound lead or whatever, and I'm using my voice IP on my computer, and they have no idea where I'm calling them from. All they see is our local office number come up because I'm dialing through our voice over IP. So, and it's pretty amazing. One of the things that we're working on right now is we've got a couple of virtual assistants working for us. And so we're starting to kind of streamline some of their workflow as well. And one of the virtual assistants that I'm working with is based in the Philippines. So, time zone issue there a little bit, so on and so forth. But, again, with what we're having her do, it's easy to integrate what she's doing into what we're doing and taking care of some administrative things and so on and so forth. And, it works. It's clunky at first. I mean, nothing is going to be 100% perfect, of course. It takes some time to refine systems and whatnot, but it can definitely be done. I would say the biggest barrier is going to be that agent that either says, yeah, I'm going to do this, or no, this is impossible. It's not going to work, I think there's another saying that, our biggest, barrier is ourselves, or something of that sort. And I think that's very true. If you've decided that, there's no way to make this happen, it won't happen. If you've decided, I'm going to figure out a way to make this happen, sure, you can do it. And you can probably figure out, the will to how it's going to work along those lines.
It comes back to where we started in this conversation of you just need to decide. If you decide that you're going to make it happen, that's really all there is to it. And I think I don't know, if you're listening to this thing and you're not excited about this opportunity to create business from anywhere to anywhere, man, you should go see a doctor, because I am pumped up and I've got ideas swimming through my head right now of different things that I can do. So Rob Mehta, robmehtapartners.com, Coldwell Banker, residential real estate in Florida, Coldwell Banker Burnett in Minnesota, Coldwell Banker in Thailand, wherever it is, you're all over the place. You've just decided to be there. I want to thank you on behalf of everybody listening for everything that you've shared with us. You've gotten me excited, and I'm sure you've gotten people revved up that are listening to this to tack on an additional piece of mailbox money opportunity to their business. Really, really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely, Bob. Thank you so much for having me. And hopefully I've got some maybe creative juices flowing for some of the listeners here. Again, there's so much potential in this industry, in our businesses. And, again, something of this sort is not something that most of your competitors are going to pursue. So if you are a little crazy like I am to try some of these things, you're going to find that, that there's a pipeline there that no one is really going to spend a whole lot of time focusing on. And if you can build it and think about the long game, there's revenue to be had, by doing it.
Awesome stuff. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Bob.